Klaas Part 2. As a reminder, topics may be triggering. Viewer discretion is advised. At the time, the Sonoma County Sheriff's Department was not aware of Polly's abduction because the Petaluma Police Department used different radio frequencies to communicate. Thankfully now, when a child goes missing, we get an Amber Alert on our cell phones, which is something the Polly Klaas Foundation worked on furiously, writing letters to state and federal officials until its fruition in 1996. On November 27, 1993, the owner of the property Richard was removed from finds a pair of child-sized red tights, an adult sweatshirt, and a piece of silky cloth with makeup stains on it near the area his car was stuck. The property owner calls the police that night and leaves a message. They call again the next morning. When an officer arrives at the property, they find condoms, tape, a beer bottle, a plastic empty six-pack holder, and matches. Unfortunately, by picking up these items instead of leaving them as is, the crime scene was contaminated. The Petaluma Police Department was able to confirm that the silky cloth with makeup stains on it matched pieces of cloth found in Polly's bedroom. Richard had an outstanding parole violation warrant out for his arrest based on a drunk driving arrest in Ukiah on October 19, 1993. Authorities head to Richard's sister's house in Ukiah on November 30th, 1993, and arrest him. They noticed he had shaved off his beard. His car and personal belongings were seized into evidence. On December 2nd, 1993, his prints were matched to those lifted from Polly's bedroom. On December 4th, 1993, Richard finally admits to murdering Polly and agrees to help authorities recover her body. When questioned, he says he was in Petaluma on October 1st, 1993, in hopes of finding his mom. Failing to find her, he then goes to Wickersham Park, where he smokes a PCP-laced blunt and drinks beer. High out of his mind, he enters Polly's home through a window, ties the girls up, driving with Polly in the car until he gets stuck on Pythian Road. He takes Polly out of his car and places her on an embankment, all while the police are called to remove him from the private property. He waits 30 minutes for the police to leave after helping him get his car out of the ditch and returns to retrieve Polly. He stops at a gas station to use the restroom. Afraid to go back to prison, he realizes he has to kill Polly, so he strangles her with a piece of knotted cloth. He drags her body to some bushes and covers her body with plywood. He denies essaying her. Richard leads investigators to Dutcher Creek Road in Cloverdale, California, 100 feet from Highway 101, where they find Polly's badly decomposed body. Although the FBI's evidence team revealed Polly's underwear indicated possible signs of semen, further forensic testing was not able to detect semen at the crime scene, basically meaning that if semen was ever present, it would be undetectable due to having disintegrated in the elements. Fibers matching the carpet in Richard's car were found in Polly's bedroom. Fibers recovered from the sweatshirt on Pythian Road were consistent with the nightgown found on Polly's body in Cloverdale. Fibers in Polly's hair were consistent with fibers on the Ford Pinto's carpet. Polly's hair was found on the red tights recovered on Pythian Road. DNA of Richard's hair was found in Polly's room. Evidence showed they were forcibly removed, and Richard's confession was videotaped. Richard was born on June 2, 1954, to Evelyn Smith and Robert Davis. Richard spent his younger years in South San Francisco with his 2 older brothers and 2 younger sisters. As I've said this before, absolutely nothing is an excuse to become a murderer, And people are dealt with a hell of a lot more difficult woes than he was. But just to get a glimpse of his pathetic life, both of his parents were raging and violent alcoholics. As a toddler, 3-year-old Richard's mother would punish him by holding his hands over the stove. After a bitter divorce in 1965, he and his siblings were daunted with the task of choosing which parent to live with. He chose his father, and when he reached his teenage years, on one occasion, his father broke his jaw. His earliest recorded crime was at 12 for burglary and forgery, committing burglary again at 15, and motorcycle theft at 17. He enlisted in the Army and was discharged after 13 months. Richard was a career criminal. I don't have time to go into his extensive criminal history, but I'll summarize it for you guys. Between December 1984 and March 1985, Richard committed 7 robberies in Kennewick, Washington, and Modesto, California. In early July of 1993, he was living in a traditional housing shelter in San Mateo, California. On October 12, 1973, Richard went to a house party. That night, the host was found dead of a gunshot wound, and although several suicide notes were found and the police ruled it as such, even so, the woman's friends, and to be frank, I believe he could have possibly had something to do with her death. On September 24, 1976, the then 22-year-old drunk and probably high Richard abducts a woman at the South Hayward BART station as she was getting into her car. He beat her, exposed himself, pushed her head down to his pants. She managed to escape and flagged down a California Highway Patrol officer who chased Richard down and arrested him. In December of 1976, he escapes from Napa State Hospital's psychiatric ward and goes on a crime spree. On December 16, 1976, he breaks into a woman's home in Napa, California, and beats her on the head with a fireplace poker. On December 20th, 1976, this cucuy breaks into an animal shelter and steals a shotgun, breaks into another woman's home, another woman's car in Napa, and makes her drive to Santa Rosa. She grabs the gun she kept underneath her seat and fires at him and manages to get away. On December 21st, 1976, in La Honda, California, he burglarizes another woman's home, and police find him lurking and hiding in a bush with an unloaded gun and knives. He served 6 months of his sentence for the La Honda string of burglaries, and 5 weeks after being released, he was arrested for yet another burglary on May 13, 1974. Unfortunately, he was let out of prison yet again on parole on June 27, 1993. And this was when he went to live in transitional housing.